Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today is day 4 of my Halloween week of videos, and today I'm going to talk about the film Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954. The Creature from the Black Lagoon is considered part of the Universal monsters, even though all of the other Universal monsters are from the 30s and 40s. Horror movies at that time were different than what they were in the 50s. It was really completely different era. Most of the Universal monsters are pre-World War II, and this is post-World War II and during the B-movie kind of drive-in era. So at first, it can be a little jarring if you're used to the Universal monsters, just because you wouldn't expect someone to just kind of throw in one from a different era. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, or Gill-man as he's often called, is considered to be the last of the Universal monsters. I don't know why they didn't keep trying to make Universal monsters, but this was the last one. It was part of the tail end of the 3D craze. It was actually the 3D craze which had come in about 53. This film came out in 54. And by this point, it was kind of dying out. So they didn't release it in as many theaters in 3D. I keep reading about how if you saw it in the city, it would be in 3D, but if you saw it in kind of more of the neighborhood suburban theaters, it would be in 2D. And I did not get to see it in 3D. I saw it in 2D. It's black and white 3D. And I think it would have been interesting to see in 3D, since there are a lot of things that like come at you, like, it's coming at you. A lot of him reaching for things, I'm reaching for this, and a lot of people shooting things in a bat that just really comes out of nowhere, has nothing to do with the plot. They do ham it up in those certain aspects, but the underwater photography is incredible for the time period and still looks pretty good now. It's pretty amazing that it looks as good as it does. I mean, there's the famous shot of the girl swimming and the creature swimming right beneath her. Most of the underwater stuff is probably the best cinematography of the entire film. Apparently the underwater stuff looks really good in 3D, so I'm curious to actually see that in 3D at one point. I know Film Forum in New York sometimes plays it, and every now and then they re-release it in 3D, so if they do, maybe I should get my ass over there. But this is very much kind of part of the B-movie drive-in era, and so it's not really scary, but it is a lot of fun. That's how I feel about a lot of monster movies, especially in America at this time. They're kind of fun films that you could probably talk during. I didn't, I just sat and watched it, but if you're going to watch it in a drive-in and make out with your date for a little bit, you could miss some plot points and you'd probably be fine. They weren't really expecting them to sit down and watch it in the theater the same way they're watching like the original Dracula and Frankenstein and The Mummy. After a group of scientists find a fossilized hand that looks like a missing link between when the fish came out of the water and eventually evolved into man, they go to the Amazon and see what else they can discover on a further expedition. And they go there, a couple scientists, this one lady who's the guy's girlfriend, that's pretty much all she is, unfortunately, and several other people on this expedition, and they find this creature, or Gill-man, and they have to deal with his wrath as he does not like them being in his portion of the Amazon River, and he attacks them, but soon falls in love with the woman as he sees her swimming, and tries to kidnap her and kill the rest of the guys who are kind of interlopers in the Amazon River, in which he calls home. This was directed by Jack Arnold, who was a 50s sci-fi drive-through studio director. He also directed It Came from Outer Space and The Incredible Shrinking Man. A lot of people consider his masterpiece. I really like The Incredible Shrinking Man. And he would eventually actually go and direct the Peter Sellers film The Mouse That Roared, which is a really great comedy. The thing is, I'm kind of unfairly comparing this, I guess, to the earlier Universal horror films, but Jack Arnold is actually a really good drive-through B-movie director, and you can see that this is a really well-made studio B drive-through kind of movie. When the music comes on, you see the creature's hand coming up from the water and it goes dun dun dun. It actually plays into it really well, and you can tell Jack Arnold knows how to do this, and he has experience doing this. He almost feels at ease in his direction, the way a good studio director should. I read that he later would go on to do television. That doesn't surprise me, because there's not too much like innovation. It doesn't feel like he's even trying for that. He does with the underwater photography, but with everything above water, it feels very plain and like a regular kind of B studio film. A well-made one, certainly, but not an amazingly well-made one. But Jack Arnold seems to really know the kind of picture people would want from Creature from the Black Lagoon. He knows really well how to shoot Julia Adams, a woman the creature has fallen in love with, and he's really good at shooting the creature within shadow. There's nothing that's really hidden from the audience. It's really working to show you the creature. So the producer of this film, William Alland, when he was making Citizen Kane, he was the reporter in Citizen Kane asking everyone the questions. He was at a dinner party and a Mexican cinematographer told him of a legend of a half-man, half-fish creature who lived in the Amazon, and he kind of combined that with Beauty and the Beast. And there's a quote from, I believe it's like the 7-Year Itch, where Marilyn Monroe's character has just seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, and she talks about how he just wanted to be loved. And it doesn't seem like there are other creatures in that Black Lagoon. And there is kind of a sense that like he doesn't really understand what's going on. He's not portrayed as just evil and monstrous, just confused and not really socially well adjusted. It's made him angry and wanting to attack and wanting to steal this one girl in a beautiful bathing suit and take her away and kill these people because they're staying around his home and he doesn't understand why they're doing all these things. It doesn't play up too much, that angle. That's probably one of my biggest complaints with how they portray the creature, is why wouldn't you really go into that? Because he is kind of more of a sympathetic monster. I think that's one of the things that Universal monsters do really well, is certain things like Frankenstein, where you feel for him. He's not just a villainous monster antagonist. And the Creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't entirely go into that. They certainly push him more towards that within the film, but they kind of do act like he didn't really know what's going on. He's confused by these people. He kind of doesn't really like them. He's an interesting monster in that regard, and that he's the last of his kind. You don't get much knowledge of how that happened and how he's this missing link in humanity. It's not really explained, although it doesn't seem like it wants to. It just wants to give you those B-movie scares and have that cool music come on when he pops out of the water and have the girl scream. Apparently the bathing suit was specially made for this movie, which is totally like a 50s old school Hollywood thing to do. I mean, it looked like any bathing suit to me. Julia Adams, she's certainly very gorgeous. She's perfectly done up throughout the whole movie, which is like totally unrealistic. With this movie, you kind of have to go with its B-moviness. You can't fight it. I don't know why I thought this would be like different from the era, because the Universal monster movies are never really different from the era. But it is interesting that the Creature from the Black Lagoon, even though it is part of this era, there's no atomic radiation. It wasn't a prehistoric monster that got irradiated, or a man who got spliced with a fish or something weird like that. He's just a prehistoric fish man who lives in the Amazon River, and nobody found him until recently. When they found that fossil in the beginning of the film, I kind of wondered if there was more of a backstory. He was the last one, or there are more of them. It's not interested in that, so I should just, I guess, let that go. I enjoy this film as kind of like a nice popcorn kind of drive-through movie. I actually think it's one of the better ones. There's been many attempts at remaking this, and actually Gary Ross, whose father wrote the screenplay, his father is Arthur A. Ross, the original screenplay, he was planning on doing one. John Landis helped develop one, John Carpenter, Peter Jackson was offered one, Guillermo del Toro tried to develop one, and it's never really happened. It was just this film and its 2 sequels, which is interesting. You'd think it would have more of a legacy. Almost all the Universal monsters, I think, have been remade in some regard, but not the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I actually would be more open to this being remade just because there's so little of it. It's odd for a horror movie to never be remade, especially a major one like The Creature. And I actually think there's a lot of room where you could do something interesting with it. B-50s movies, the ones that are exceptions are definite exceptions, like The Thing from Another World or Them and stuff like that. They weren't the norm. And this isn't exactly the norm of the period, but it plays like it is. I have seen most of those movies, and most of them are a lot more boring than this. This has an excitement to it. If you're familiar with the period, I think you find it a lot more exciting because you go, oh, okay, I get why people are excited by this, and that it was in 3D. There's not as much sitting around and talking. There's a lot more like things with the creature and really nice looking underwater photography. It took them years and years to really get underwater photography really good in Hollywood, but it's amazing that in 1954, Creature from the Black Lagoon figured it out. But if you consider the time period where it is actually fairly exciting for the time period and the kind of B movie it's trying to make. For what it is, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think that's what Creature from the Black Lagoon was trying to do. It was trying to have an arm pop up from the water and have the music play and have everybody remark about his fishy claw coming up and surprising you in 3D and laughing with your friends and eating some popcorn. And that's what this film was intended for, and there's all sorts of different horror horror movies. And I think this does the kind of horror movie it does exceptionally well. So if you have seen Creature from the Black Lagoon and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And tomorrow will be the 5th and final day of my Halloween week of videos, and tomorrow will be Halloween. And if you would like to check out any of the previous videos from my Halloween week of videos or the previous year's Halloween week of videos, click on the annotation below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow, and have a happy Halloween.